Hey everyone, I wanted to start off by thanking everybody who voted in our poll to decide our next The History Of video. A little over 200 people did, and the winner is today's topic, the German Flecktarn Camouflage. For those who voted for other categories, especially the 6-colored desert chocolate chip, don't worry, we'll get to all of them in due time. Anyway, back on topic. In this video, we will, as always, be diving into the history and reasoning for the Flecktarn pattern's creation. We'll also be covering the issued Desert Flecktarn, the desert variant used by KSK and other special forces, as well as an updated Schneetarn, and finally the new Multitarn pattern. Alrighty, let's roll the intro. Throughout World War II, forces of the Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS utilized a number of camouflage patterns for different times of the year, as well as terrain. When the war finally came to an end and Germany was split into the German Democratic Republic, aka East Germany, and the Federal Republic of Germany, aka West Germany, the large task of restructuring and re-equipping two distinct militaries was seen. Right off the bat, East Germany started with a clone of the Soviet MKK camouflage used by the Red Army during World War II. From there, they would begin creating and utilizing a few more patterns, such as the Flachtarnenmuster and Strickmuster camouflages. On the other hand, West Germany saw the use of two modified wartime patterns, the late-war Liebermuster and the Splintermuster patterns, which were mainly used by airborne and infantry units. Additionally, a series of camos based on the Sumpftarnmuster or Marsh pattern, dubbed simply as the BGS pattern, was used by the Federal Border Guards. Although Border Guard forces used the BGS pattern up until the 70s, the Bundeswehr dropped most camouflage uniforms by the end of 1960. From there on, only the occasional helmet cover and custom piece were seen, with the only real large-scale use of camouflage being the two winter Schneetarn patterns. The going reason for this decision was that Germany wanted to demilitarize their look in an attempt to appear less hostile, as well as to differentiate themselves from Eastern Bloc forces, which often issued various camouflage patterns. For the next 30 or so years, a majority of the German military opted for the same look as most of the rest of NATO, solid-colored uniforms. In the background, though, testing would continue through the 1960s on various patterns, which were eventually narrowed down to just a few that were then seen on uniforms in the mid-70s. In 1976, the German military, in cooperation with the French Army, began Truppenversuch 76, Troop Trial 76 in English. It was during this trial that select units, mostly at the infantry school in Hammelburg, began testing out these new camouflage uniforms. Most of these patterns were designed and presented by the German company Markov and Schultz, in conjunction with the French company Tex Union. There were 3 patterns, but a total of 5 variations. They were Säzantarnmuster, or sawtooth pattern, also referred to sometimes as ragged leaf, Punkttarnmuster, meaning point or dot camouflage pattern, then the 3 Flecktarn variants. Pattern A, known as Flecktarn Klein, meaning small Flecktarn, Pattern B, known as Flecktarn Grob, or large Flecktarn, and the odd one out known as Pattern C, which gained the nickname Schattentarn, which translates to shadow camouflage. With the trials completing sometime around 1977 to 78, the overall winner was determined to be Pattern B. The sizing and colors were slightly adjusted into what would become the Fünf-Farben-Tarndruck der Bundesheer, or the 5-color camouflage print of the German armed forces, which consisted of a sort of rust reddish-brown, light olive, black, light green, and dark green colors. It wasn't until the late 80s, however, did Germany begin to create and issue uniform pieces made in the pattern, and then finally begin to standardize it in 1990 after the reunification of East and West Germany. But what happened between that time period? Why did it take nearly 15 years for the chosen pattern to go from selected to adopted? Well, to start off, Germany continued trials throughout the 1980s in an attempt to update their uniforms even further. Though this time, instead of searching for a camouflage pattern, they were looking to update and improve upon the cut and material of their uniforms. Another reason for the delay, though, was the camouflage itself. It has often been stated that much like West Germany's earlier camouflages of the 60s and 70s, Flecktarn reminded many of patterns seen throughout World War II. Patterns such as the Eichenlaubmuster and Erbsenmuster used by the Waffen-SS. Additionally, there was something of a debate happening across Western and NATO Europe regarding the adoption of camouflages. As mentioned earlier, while the Cold War was happening, most of NATO equipped their forces primarily with solid-colored uniforms. The only two exceptions were the UK with its DPM pattern and France with its various lizard patterns. Many NATO members were hesitant to adopt a camouflage pattern for their armed forces because at the time it was mainly associated with Warsaw Pact militaries. But as Germany was sitting on its version of Flecktarn, a few other European countries were saying,
"Now that's not a bad idea." No, it gives me an idea.
As early as 1976, the French company Tex Union had brought forward a few variations of Flecktarn to the French army to trial. Though uniforms were made, none were ever adopted. Supposedly, Denmark was too in contact with Tex Union, and with their help created the prototype T-78 camouflage, which eventually turned into the M84, which was adopted as standard issue and began circulation in 1984. The Netherlands and Belgium even looked into adopting the pattern. Belgium did issue a modified version for select units in their Air Force in 1989, but the Netherlands did not, being that it, quote, looked too aggressive, according to one Dutch officer. Eventually, though, Germany came around, and in 1990 the pattern became standard issue. Soon after, it gained the popular nickname, but also sort of pseudo-official name of Flecktarn, which is a combination of the German words Fleck, meaning dot, spot, or blotch, with Tarnung, meaning camouflage. It is worth noting that occasionally strange pieces such as this have been spotted with early dates in official trial terminology on the tag, which means that there is a possibility Germany was experimenting with a desert pattern as early as 1985, though not much information is out there on that. Another strange Flecktarn that was seen around this time came by way of a commercially made one by the German company Sturm, and were actually made of leftover Pattern A or small Flecktarn prototype cloth. Regardless of those two though, the next big official update came around 1993 when the UN began an intervention to help Somalia during its civil war. Known as UNISOM-1, or the United Nations Operations in Somalia, a coalition of 18 nations, one being Germany, formed the United Task Force, or UNITAF for short. Although Germany's involvement was a strictly humanitarian one, forces within Somalia had to deal with their predominantly green Flecktarn patterns, as well as a uniform cut not entirely suitable for hotter climates. Seeing this, the Bundesheer realized that hot weather uniforms and arid camouflage patterns would be needed for future operations. So, starting in the same year, German troops underwent another series of field trials, which would test out both a new lighter weight uniform for hotter temperatures, as well as a new desert version of Flecktarn. The new pattern was finalized in 1999. This version kept the same design as standard Flecktarn, but instead of utilizing 5 colors, only used 3. The changes were as follows. The green color replaced the black, the brown replaced the rust red, and the tan replaced the 2 green and 1 olive colors. Its official name is Drei Farben Tarndruck der Bundeswehr, or the 3-color camouflage print of the German armed forces. Aside from the common name of Desert Flecktarn, it is also somewhat officially referred to as Wüstentarn, meaning desert pattern, and occasionally Steppentarn, meaning steppe pattern. However, this is where things get a little confusing. In addition to those names, it has also been referred to as Truppentarn, meaning tropical pattern. Truppentarn is actually the cut of the uniform, not the camouflage pattern. So, putting it simply, here are 3 points to remember. Both woodland and desert Flecktarn patterns can be on the Truppentarn uniform. All desert Flecktarn is made in the Truppentarn cut. And finally, although woodland can be made in the Truppentarn cut, not all woodland uniforms are Truppentarn. You'll see woodland Truppentarn uniforms being used in hotter and or drier terrain that isn't necessarily arid, while the traditional cut would be used in more colder to moderate locations, such as Germany itself. One of the first instances of woodland Truppentarn uniforms being used was by forces who participated in the NATO-led KFOR operations in Kosovo. The easiest way to identify a Truppentarn uniform is the lack of a front zipper and open meshed armpits, whereas a standard uniform has a zipper as well as a button-up closure and 3 small vent holes under the sleeves. It is also worth noting that with the Truppentarn uniforms, the standard Flecktarn pattern did see a slight adjustment in the colors because of the lighter weight fabric, which you can see here. All confusion aside, by 2001, both the Desert Flecktarn and new tropical cut uniforms were in circulation. The next update came in the form of a modified variant of the Wüstentarn by the company Saber in 2004. Though not exactly an officially issued pattern, this variant was used by certain KSK and other German Special Forces units in places such as Afghanistan. Aside from the cut of the uniform being different, the main change was the adjustment of the desert pattern's colors. Though this pattern was used quite a bit, it was short-lived and saw a stop in use around 2010. Finally, in early 2016, Germany announced it was in the process of releasing 2 new patterns: a new snow camouflage called Multitarn, meaning snow pattern, and an updated Flecktarn pattern for a more general use called Multitarn. Unlike the 2 previous snow camouflages, also referred to as Multitarn, this new pattern incorporates 3 colors, white, gray, and green, and uses them in similar shapes seen in Flecktarn. Multitarn, which if you haven't already figured out means multi-pattern or camouflage, takes the familiar shapes of the original Flecktarn and bumps the total number of colors from 5 to 6, as well as altering them for various wooded and arid environments. The creator, Alexander Dietl, and his team from the Institute for Material and Supplies began work in 2011 designing and testing various prototype patterns, with field trials taking place at the Camouflage and Deception Technology Center near Brandenburg, as well as various locations throughout Afghanistan. This new pattern is said to work far better than most others in the near-infrared and to the naked eye in more arid and lightly wooded environments, or as Dietl put it, in low to moderate green content. Regardless, the pattern started being issued to certain Special Forces units in 2015 and will continue to be slowly phased into all forces of the Bundeswehr. Although the concept of a Flecktarn pattern has always and is still associated primarily with Germany and the Bundeswehr, it has expanded out past its country of origin. Aside from the countries mentioned earlier, the pattern has also seen use, be it copies or variants, in Poland, India, Russia, China, and even Japan. And with that, we've come to the conclusion of a rather lengthy origin and evolution of the German Flecktarn camouflage family. As always, remember to subscribe or check back soon for more videos right here on Uniform History.